John, why don't you kick it off?
Thank you all for being here at Jamie's unfolding bar mitzvah. It's the world's longest bar mitzvah. It keeps going. But the senator is going to lead things off, and then I'm going to do sort of the second half. We come from, it takes two people to fully understand the phenomena that is Valerie Biden Owens, and so we are going to we're going to divide that, and so the senator will go first, and then I'll follow. I do want to announce that I attempted to make Valerie my second wife recently. It didn't go well, but see if y'all can help me.
Oh. This is 2 against 1 here, so you come with me, okay? Stick with me on this. Yes, John, at one point, what you're referring to, we were friends, and and he said, you know, you are one of my favorite women. And I said, excuse me? On the phone. You are one of my favorite women. I said, one of? Not any longer. I mean, who's going to be one of, right? None of you women would take that. So, all right.
Well, with that opening,
okay.
I could tell you the quick story of how I met Valerie, although I know she did remember it after all these years, because I was one of many people who came into her life because of her brother Joe, and I'll explain it. So in 1987, I was in the House of Representatives. I'd gotten there in '83. And when Joe decided, he was thinking about running and then decided to run for president, I called him up. I had worked with him on saving the dolphin and environmental issues, and his little kid, Ashley, at that time was telling him, you have to do something, Daddy. And so we worked together. So when I called him, I said, I really want to help. I don't know what I can do. Tell me what I should do. He said 2 words to me, and they weren't a curse, and they weren't thank you. They were call Valerie. And I said, Valerie? And he said, she runs everything to do with my campaigns. And that's how I met Valerie. I called her. Make a long story short, that campaign didn't work out the way we wanted. But I'll never forget her, because she was one of the smartest, brightest lights in the room.
Oh.
And I mean it. And there were no women doing this work. Take it from me. I mean, I was in the Year of the Woman in the Senate when we finally tripled our numbers and people said, oh, isn't that fantastic? We went from 2 to 6. Valerie was the only one out there, and we're going to talk about it. But since I have a short time and I am a senator and I talk too much, I'm going to get right to the question, the very first question. So when you were a little kid and you finally became your brother's most trusted political advisor and friend, you write that you lived in Joe's shadow willingly, these are your words, and happily. And you led him through winning campaigns for almost 50 years in the background by choice, because you can see this is a woman who thrives, yes, in the background, but also right out there. So what is it about your brother, our president, that kept you working for him in the background?
Well, I never felt like I was in the background. You know, there are 2 ways to spread the light, Edith Wharton said. One is to be the candle, and the other is the mirror that reflects it. And Joe and I, it balanced back and forth. And he told me from the time I was a little girl that whatever he could do, he said, you could do better. Which couldn't possibly be true, because he was years older, and now he's years and years and years older. And stronger and braver than I. But you know, his faith in me, I knew I owed it to him and to myself to try to be that little girl or that woman that he thought I could be. I would say, though, for every campaign manager, you should be in the background. You're not the candidate. And when I was running campaigns, if the principals in the campaign were the ones on the front page, not as opposed to the candidate, I would have fired them. That's not their job. The job is to be the candidate, to go out to listen to people, to try to persuade them, to try to learn from them. And it's part of the job. It's a natural place to be. And it was easy. I mean, he was my best friend. So I was his sidekick. I was with him, and he listens to me. I mean, he pays attention to me, and that's what I'm there for. You can't fire a sister.
So when you were children, you write that Joe started family meetings. You used to have meetings with the kids. Could you give us a sense of what those were like?
Okay, I'm Irish Catholic middle class family, mid 20th century. Split level house, 3 bedrooms. We were not poor, we were middle class. My dad sold cars when I was a campaign, and then was a manager of the local dealership. But it would have mattered if my father skipped a paycheck. So and again, in those days, in middle class, you didn't talk about money. It was just kind of, not, déclassé or whatever the fancy word is. And what the hell did you ask me?
Well, I wanted to ask you
family meeting.
what those
Yes.
meetings were
Yeah.
like.
So, if my mom said when we walked out of the door that the 4 kids, that we had to stick together, we had to have each other's back. There's nothing closer, we were told, than brothers and sisters. So Mom would say when we walked out, remember, you're Bidens. Now, not like you're Rockefellers or the Kennedys, but you're a unit and you take care of each other. But when we came back into the house, we were just like normal 4 kids, We would have squabbles, we have differences of opinions, and all the way of our arguments were that we would hurt each other's feelings. I mean, none of us ever willingly went after the other, but you hurt people's feelings. And so whatever, it was democratic, we could call a meeting, and Joe, who, when I talk about him, good is good enough. He doesn't walk on water, he doesn't lay the hands, he could be a jerk, he could be a wonderful person, he's a brother. So if something happened, and one of us would call a family meeting, we'd go upstairs in the bedroom, my parents never interfered, we'd shut the door and say, Joe, what did you do that for? And when I was with Maureen yesterday, why did you say that? And you really embarrassed me. I want to stab you. Something close to that. And the answer would be, geez, I did what? I didn't mean that, or whatever it was. The pain or the hurt was talked about, was expressed, and it was said, gee, I made a mistake, or I'm really sorry, and it would be over with. My parents never came in, they never interfered, and we'd walk out and we would be back being friends. It's not easy raising an older brother. So, I had a tight rod, but that's what family meetings were. We never let it fester. We each make mistakes. Nobody's perfect, and we worked it out.
Well, that's a beautiful message for family, for friends, for colleagues of any kind, to talk it out and don't let that anger or fear or disappointment change your relationship. So I loved reading about the Biden family rules. You write about what they were, and here's what you wrote. 1, we're expected to tell the truth. 2, and as I say these things, I think of the president, okay? So think of the president. Expected to tell the truth, expected to stand up to bullies, expected to treat everyone with dignity, expected to never despair. Those rules, they're wonderful rules, and I wondered, where do they come from? They come from your mom, your dad, your brother, you? Where
They come from both of us. We never had rules, that were on the refrigerator door. We just, we were 4 little kids, and we knew what Mom and Dad expected of us, and we didn't want to disappoint them. And there were refrains that were used in the family all the time. My dad is it doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down, get up fast. That was one of them. And you never call, dignity was a big deal. My brother uses the expression all the time, Dad, a paycheck is more than the money you earn. It's about dignity. It's about your place in the community. My brother, when he was a kid, was a terrible stutterer. He could not string more than 3 words together at a time. And I didn't realize that as a little girl, because he was my big brother, but as I got older, I saw it. And once you've tasted humiliation, I mean, that bile stays in your throat for a long time. And I think that my brother is the leader and the man that he is because of having had a debilitating stutter and knowing and having the backbone to layer by layer bring confidence and strength and practice and know that you are not going to be defined by a bully. And people bullied him. He was smaller. He didn't, and like me, I did not go into this voluptuous woman overnight. It took me a while. You know, my brothers didn't, you know, they weren't big, and they didn't grow big and strong until later in their teens. So I think that the stuttering gave him the empathy. And again, empathy is a word that if when I don't want to sound preachy, but it is what is missing most in our society today. And you know, Atticus Finch said it better, to walk inside another person's skin. But if you're able to do that even for a little bit, you're a better person. And Joe did because of the heart. You know, adversity builds character much more than the spoils of victory. And I think that those lessons came from Mom and Dad, but talking to us not as, there were never rules. It was never you go to your room and, you know, I'm taking away your bicycle and you can, the worst words that my father or mother, and my mother said it, the worst word she could ever say is, just get out of my sight now. I was like, oh, Jesus, what a, you know, that was terrible. She never said it to me. Well, maybe once or twice.
That's too much. Well, this is a wonderful story about you and Joe when, what your brother Joe did when your dad told you that he couldn't afford the cost of college for you and that you should go to secretarial school. And the way Joe responded to that, could you share that with us?
Yeah. Now, my dad was not a male chauvinist. I mean, he's a wonderful, decent, kind man who simply did not have the financial resources to have, there were four kids. So, and again, Joe's in college and I'm in high school, and it's time for me to go to the university. I had gone to Ursuline Academy for Young Girls, 63 girls in the class. I could not wait to get to the University of Delaware. It's like died and it was Candyland, you know, like. But part of college was, for me, was living at college, which Joe did. And I was a good student, so I got in. And my dad, God bless him, tried to make everything okay because he was a car salesman, car manager. He was able to give me a car, which was a lot less expensive than room and board. I mean, I got to go to college, but not to, and he said, honey, you can use this and you can commute. And it didn't work out that way. And long cut to the chase, my brother Joe, in August, and it doesn't look like, Dad couldn't get the money, and we worked. I mean, it wasn't I was getting my nails done and, you know, I couldn't work. I mean, we worked, but there was not enough. And my brother Joe called a family meeting with Mom and Dad, and he said, come on, Val, come with me. And he said, Dad, I'm not going to go back to school. I'm going to take this year off. And no, don't worry, Dad. I mean, I'm going to college. Mom and Dad did not go to college, so being a college man was a big deal. And he said, I'm not going to go this year. I'm going to take a year off, and I'm going to work so that I will have enough money to go back next year, and so that Val can go this year, because my brother said, because she's smarter than I am. She's a better person than you know what big brothers say, but all good things, and she deserves it. So let her go, and I promise I'll go back next year. And my father said, Champ, you can't do that. He called my brother Champ. He called me Willie. I mean, go figure, but because at the time, which was true, the man was the breadwinner. And my dad said to me, honey, you're beautiful, you're smart, you can go. There was nothing bad about secretarial school, except I didn't want to go there. I mean, I wanted to go and major in English and history at the university. So, but he said, it'll be okay. You're going to marry somebody, you're going to have kids, and it'll be great. And that's, somehow my father got the loan, but I didn't know whether, when my brother said it, I wanted to cry. I couldn't, because I didn't want to take that away from him. I wanted him to be able to go, but for him to give it up for me was the way that it is. You don't count the expression. My son's out over there, Cuff, and the expression is that you don't count the change. Whoever has it at the time does it, and it flips back and forth. Who takes care of it?
Well, I found that so touching of your brother.
And I was a better student, just saying. We both went there.
He knew that this was a pivotal moment in your life. So I have one more question, because I'm going to toss it to Jon, because we're sharing this, even though we hate to share it, because as you
even though I hung up on him.
the joy of interviewing Valerie. So I'm going to get to a very tough part, and I'm going to ask you to read your own words, and I have the book here. I'll pass it to you. But in 1972, you run Joe Biden's first race for the United States Senate. He was a huge underdog. It was a terrible year for Democrats. It was a Richard Nixon landslide. I ran that year myself and lost for local government. So I know how hard it was. But you did it. And you write that you savored that race more than anything. And we don't have time to ask you why, but I certainly know when you're the underdog like that. And I know it was a family thing and all those wonderful things. So now comes the very tough part in what has so far been a very sunny story. And the chapter you call Shattered. And what happened is, I think everybody knows that the tragedy that ensued with Joe losing his wife, Nelia, who was one of Valerie's absolute role models, as she writes in her book, and his daughter and the two boys are very badly hurt, but they survive. And Joe is the youngest, one of the youngest ever elected to the United States Senate. So like he's 29 years old. And could you just read what you wrote, and then I'm going to ask you to say a few more things, and I'm going to turn it over to Jon. If you get the book, this is something you're going to want to remember, the poetry of it.
Okay. So this is, we were elected November 7th, the first time, 1972. Interesting, we were elected 48 years later, November 7th, for the presidency. So Nelia and the baby, who's 13 months old, were hit broadside by a tractor trailer. They were killed immediately. Bo and Hunt, who were 2 and 3, were very seriously injured and in intensive care in the hospital for a long time. And I got to share them with my brother and move in with them. Okay. We all like to imagine we're in control. But in growing older, we experience many reminders that we are not. As much as we try, we cannot will life's outcomes to our specifications. Perhaps we can bend the arc of our journey, but we cannot forge it in steel. In the dark of my night, in the dark of my sadness, I let go and take the plunge into faith's deep waters. Thy will be done. To maintain my sanity, I choose to believe, against the odds as I know them, that I will be helped. I will survive. Some good will come.
Thank you so much for reading that. That's beautifully written. So I'm going to turn it over to John and sit back and listen.
Well, thanks, Senator, for that very cheerful segue. You could revise.
He is so irreverent, you know.
You could revise and extend your remarks as well. So, you're a critical architect of what has become one of the most important political careers in American history. Republican or Democrat, liberal or conservative, rural or urban, the campaign of 2020, the campaign of 2022, the campaign of 2024, now unfolding, are without any partisan tinge, vital, really, to the continuance of constitutional government in the country. What is it about Joe Biden and the Biden family, which are connected, obviously, intimately, that gave him the resilience to, the senator was part of the first presidential campaign, for President Biden to run and win in 2020 is roughly as if Adlai Stevenson had run and won in 1988, right? Given the amount of time between a presidential run and a different presidential run. What drives him, which I think is also a question about what drives the family?
My brother is a public servant. I mean, that's who he is. It doesn't make him good or heroic or bad. It just is who he is. And he has always been, he's always appealed to the better angels. He is, he was a natural leader. I mean, growing up, he never stood up and, you know, pounded his chest and said, "Come follow me, you know, I'm going to do this." But people gravitated to him because he's decent and he's kind, he's strong and he's capable. But to the qualities of a leader, temperament, empathy, intelligence, patience. Well, patience, not so much. Yeah, no, but I mean, yeah. And, you know, I think...
Ask Putin about that.
Yeah, that's true. I think that he's, he's always had purpose. And he gets up and he really does think about how to do things better. Again, I don't want to make him a superhero, you know, he's just a regular guy, but he's a decent man, and he has such a trust in the American people and the values of the American people. Give a fair shake, equal justice, you know, no haven for hatred, and that together we can do anything. And you know, I think the most important characteristic of a leader is character. And if I may so bold as now, your character is on the line, just as much as my brother's, of who you're going to choose for president. And so I think it is, again, he's a regular guy, but it's a commitment to the dignity and the justice that is just the way that we were raised. We were Catholic school kids, and it happened that the values, the social values of the nuns that we were reinforced in school and the priests that my brother went to, that was Catholic social values meshed with our family values. So we weren't Catholic little do-gooders to, well, you're a JV squad, you're Episcopalian, aren't you?
I am. We're God's frozen people.
Yeah,
Was it frozen?
Yeah.
frozen people.
There are only 6 of us left. But we appreciate. I've been trying to get the president to cross the Thames, but it is
It's not going to happen.
no. But there's plenty of room in our pews.
That is,
And actually, our pews are kind of thinning out too in our Catholic Church. But I'm not going to let the Catholic Church drive me out of my Catholic Church. It's
Good
my
for you.
church.
Good for you.
So again, I don't know where the heck I was going with that, but it's about character and resilience. And again, I think when you've the story is, our story is public because he's president, you know, obviously. But I think that the book is about the magic of family and the threads that weave the fabric of family together, which are commitment and loyalty and love and heartbreak and disappointment and loss. They're the same threads that run through your families. I mean, we're not the only one. Whatever hardships we've had, but you've had them too. And it's to the degree that we are willing to understand and appreciate that about each other, that will make us all better. And Joe's he's not a pie-in-the-sky idealist, but he is a believer in the better angels. And I think it's your quote that you said that American history, American politics is not a fairy tale. Did you say that?
I did.
Okay. Well, I quoted him, as you noted.
I love that because that's the first time you've ever quoted me. So that's exciting. No, it's not. It's a push and a pull between what Lincoln called our better angels and our worst instincts. And I think it's remarkable that we've gotten this far, honestly. But I do think it is, and you and I have disagreed about this before. I honestly believe there's something providential about the fact that someone with the life experience, the political experience, was where he was in 2020, facing again, this is not a partisan point. I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican, I'm a constitutionalist, which is a diminishing group. It's like Episcopalians these days. But that he was willing to go into the arena once more.
Yeah. And that was the first time in 2020 that I was not anxious for it. I mean, I really and truly did run all of his campaigns for Rio. And because nobody else took us seriously. And we had no money, no influence, you know, no Democratic Party in the state. And, you know, and I could complete his sentence because I was with him all the time. So he could go out and meet the people and I could run. I had no other agenda except Joe and what we wanted to do. But when 2020 came, we had no intention of running. We wanted to run in 2016. And then Bo, Joe's eldest child, elder son, the kid that I got when he was 3 years old, Aunt Val, he died of a terrible death. He was 46 of glioblastoma. So you can't run for president unless you give it your whole heart and your whole soul and the whole family's in it. Well, the family couldn't do it. In May of 30th, 2015, he dies. How are you going to run? How are you going to run? How's Aunt Val going to be in Florida and Joe's going to be in California? And, you know, we just had to mend. So it was over. He got out, he finished being vice president, and we set up the Biden at the University of Pennsylvania for global studies, Biden Hall at the Biden School at the University of Delaware for domestic policy, finishing cancer, was called Cancer Moonshot under Obama. We called it the Cancer Initiative. And we're involved. He's doing real things. And then Charlottesville came. And he, again, goes back to being bullied. He saw those men and women coming out of the woods with tiki torches, just like in Nazi Germany. And he said, I got to do it, Val. I can't look at myself in the mirror and turn away because I'm afraid. I'm not going to be bullied. And he believed, and we believed, that he was the right person at the right time for the right job. And we weren't, like, he didn't wake up in the morning wanting to hear hail to the chief. And I sure in hell didn't want to wake up to that campaign, which I knew and was not disappointed, was going to be ugly, ugly, ugly. And the way to get to Joe was to get to his family. And I said, you know, God. And he said, Val, I got to do it. And I said, okay, then, you know, buckle up. I'm with you. And it was very different. I hung up my, I hung up my spikes, to use the sporting analogy, to put on combat boots.
Yeah.
Well, somebody else came in to run the campaign, and I did what, my PhD is not in campaign management, my PhD is in Joe Biden. So that I could go out where he wasn't and talk about Joe Biden and character and why he was the right person, and listen to you and come back and say, Joe, you know, I just met somebody today and this is what, and translate. And you, I don't want to ruin your reputation, but
It's well ruined.
it's wonderful in wordsmithing and believing the commitment. So we ran, but I mean, once we said yes, I was in full bore. And this next one, I mean, that's going to look like Mary Poppins in 2020, what we're going to go through. But you just can't back down. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir. I mean, we're on you talk democracy.
No.
I mean, look at what you're going to hang and quarter and imprison the people who are against you, and you're going to be a dictator and you make fun of people. I mean, he is the biggest junkyard bully that ever existed, and I can't even say both their names in the same sentence because it's degrading to say Joe Biden's name in the same sentence with his. So there you go.
How has life changed for the president being in the White House? It was such an extraordinary time because of COVID. It was hard to enjoy the place in the campaign. For a man who, for more than half a century, lived on tactile politics, not being able to do that in 2020 was hard. But is there anything different about the Joe Biden of 2024 than the Biden of 20?
No, I mean, he still gets up again. It sounds so, I'm not trying to make him grander. I mean, he gets up in the morning and he thinks about what he can do to make things better. And he goes to bed at night, and I mean, it weighs on him. But I talk to him frequently because he's my brother. And I say, gee, Joe, it's what else can land on your desk? And he said, Val, that's the job I signed up for. So he's not Marvin Martyr. It's the job. He knows what it is. But there's been, in my mind, there's been a lot with COVID. There's a lot less. You can't do so many fun things. You know, when the White House, like, it doesn't matter to Joe, but it mattered to me when we were inaugurated. And, you know, there's a parade and a gala and a ball. And I said, this really stinks. You know, I want that parade. And, you know, Joe didn't care if there was the parade or there was a ball. He had work to do. But I think, and, you know, we weren't able to open up the White House to have people come in and enjoy it because of COVID. And up until, a year or so ago, you know, the July 4th, and it was outside. So there's not, Joe thrives on, everybody knows thinks of him as a talker. which you might walk away thinking that this Biden is also, but equally, he's a listener. And he really, he listens up to what you say, and to shake hands and to talk. I mean, he absorbs it. And that is harder, that for him, for the joy of, he loves campaigning. I mean, he loves to be out there, and he loves the rope line, and he likes doing it, and it gives him energy, and it fulfills him, and there's been a whole lot less. And the White House is magnificent, but it's hermetically sealed. You know, it's a magnificent place, but it's...
Harry Truman called it the crown jewel of the federal penal system.
I think the Obama said pretty much the same.
It's like living in the Hay Adams.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yes.
Cheaper, but...
It's public housing at its best.
Right.
Is what it is.
Right. But nobody's whining about it. But it is on a human level, it is a different experience. What do you wish for over the next couple of years?
I wish that we could, I mean, it sounds, civility. That would be, what I don't understand, I appreciate, comprehend, apprehend, understand that people don't want my brother to be president. They don't agree with this policy. For whatever reasons, it's all legit. What I don't understand is the vitriol and the hatred. I mean, I think, what the hell has he ever done to get that vileness? I mean, who are these people? Yeah, I don't understand that. I don't like it if you say you don't like my brother because of his position. I don't say, oh, isn't that, it really makes me happy. But I respect it. But there is so little respect, so little civility, and it's just this small group of people who have taken over. I was in the airport to come here, and my colleague who's in the Sebastian, who's in the audience, we had a layover in Phoenix. And we're going to our next to get here. And he stops me and he said, Val, I just want you to know that seating to get on the plane, there's a man with a hat, and it has FJB, and there's a group of men around him, and, you know, just to be aware. Says FJB, Franklin Joseph, what? FJB. You know, and I said, FJB.
That was a big radio station in Cincinnati.
I said, what's FJB mean? He said, Valerie, and it's, screw Joe Biden, but, and on both sides, and then in the front, when I got around, it said, Ultra MAGA. Now, who does that? You know, I mean, who does that? Who has onesies online, you know, with FUCK Biden for a baby? Like onesie suits. I mean, who does that? So that, you know, that doesn't, I mean, Joe transcends, goes over that. Me, I don't like it. I wanted to go up and rip that darn hat, right? But I would have gotten arrested, and it's against what I really would have liked to have done. I mean, I didn't want to. Is to say why? Yeah. I would have liked to have sat next to him and say, "That's my brother." You know. So why are you wearing that hat? What does that mean?
Hey Val, if point of personal privilege, you remind me of something in the book.
The gentle lady from California.
Thank you very much. Gentle lady was when I was in the House, but when I was in the Senate, I was no longer gentle.
What, you're just the
lady? And they said senator. They said senator.
The lady from...
No lady.
No lady?
It was just plain old senator. But I want to tell you about this because I love your passion. I love it so much. And I read about it in the book when your brother Joe suffered a horrible aneurysm. and he was so sick, and you walked into
Oh, yeah.
that story. I want you to share it because it's the same things what you just told John about this recent experience, where you walked in and there was a headline in the press, and it said, Joe Biden's brain, something about his brain. Tell them about what you did.
He's at Walter Reed. He's had an aneurysm, and we don't know if he's going to live or die. And then when we find out he's going to live, it's the first time I ever heard the term morbidity versus mortality. And they didn't know if he'd have his faculties where the aneurysm was. They cut open his head and moved some things around. So I came back on Sunday. The family was down there, and Jack, my husband, and I drove back on Sunday. Took my daughter, for Christmas I had given her tennis lessons, mommy and the daughter. I mean, I never knew how to play tennis, but because that was a preppy sport, but I wanted to do it for her. Couldn't play tennis, I couldn't even lift a racket, left my head, so I dropped her off to the tennis, and I went to the local, it was a Dunkin' Donut place, and they have the J-shaped counter, and right across the street was a Catholic church, and Mass had just let out. So people from Mass had come, and they're sitting down at the counter. And down at the bottom, there's a man, and he's surrounded by 6 or 7 other guys in the corner, and they're having a good old time. There's one seat right here. And they have the news journal in front of them, and the headline said, Biden's head cut open. And the guy, and they're laughing, and one guy said, ha, 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 I'm surprised they found anything in it. He should have died. Yeah, these are my good Catholic guys who coming in from church. He should have died. And it was like an out-of-body experience. I'm drinking my coffee, and I found myself, I got up, and I walked down the aisle, and right to the corner, and it must have been like that Hutton, what's that commercial, everybody's quiet, E.F. Hutton or something.
Yeah.
And everything got quiet, and the kind of parting the way, and I went up to the man at the counter, and I tapped him on the shoulder. I said, I'm Valerie Biden, and it's really kind of you to have such good wishes for my brother. And I had my coffee, and I took it, and I poured it on his lap. And put it down, and it was like, whoo, the place is silent. Got in the car, picked my daughter up to go home. She didn't say a word, and I got home with my husband, Jack, and I walked in the house, and I saw him, and I actually threw myself at him, and I started to cry. And I sobbed, easily 30 minutes. And I said, I've done something terrible. Look, and I told him what I had done. And he said, no, honey, you didn't do anything terrible. He said, if I had been there, I would have thrown him through the plate glass window. Now that would have been terrible. So that's...
Thank you for sharing.
That's
John,
great.
thank you for letting me ask that question. Thank you.
The senator from California has all privileges.
Thank you.
All privileges. What can we do?
You can, what we all have to do is remember the election is not about Joe. The election's about you. It's about the person who lives next door. It's about character. It's keeping America safe and keeping our dignity. And we have to open our mouth. Silence is complicity.
That's right.
Complicity, right? Complicity.
It's also complex, but yeah.
Yeah. So open your mouth. Don't pour the hot water on somebody's lap, but we got, again, I sound like I'm preaching, but we got to speak up. We cannot be, there's this core of what is almost evil. I mean, that person with that cap on, he didn't hate Joe Biden, he just hated. It didn't have anything, it didn't have anything to do with Joe Biden. I mean, Joe can give him lots of reasons, but that guy hated everything. So we just got to step up to the plate and you know, America's worth fighting for. And so is my brother.
Thank you all. Thank you, Valerie Biden Owens.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.